webinar on Infor GL Report Designer. This is our third time, I believe, getting together to talk about Infor GL Report Designer since it first came out in April of 2023. We've covered things like lessons learned, best practices, how we see the product being used. We've done some demos. Today, we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to still cover the key product feature releases that we love, but we're also going to talk about how we can layer on Birst to your GL Report Designer product to level up your reports, to improve the look and feel, which ultimately we've come to learn can improve user acceptance. Over the last year or so, we have seen a pretty significant adoption of the GL Report Designer product amongst the clients that we're working with. Both brand new organizations implementing Infor, but also existing Lawson customers moving to Infor Cloud Suite. So today we want to share a lot of our observations where we have seen Birst become a big value add to the GL Report Designer product, and we'll take it from there. My name's Chris Gordon. I manage the RPI finance team of consultants, and I'm happy to be joined here with Ian Sauter, one of our finance consultants. Ian, do you want to say hi and kick us off here?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name's Ian Sauter, as Chris said. I've been with RPI for 2 years, based out of Washington, D.C., and I'm excited to talk about some of the new things Report Designer has to offer.
Great.
Yeah, so just starting off, we wanted to kind of discuss some of the things that have come to Report Designer in the last year or so, and kind of to show how it's come a long way from when it was first introduced as a reporting product within Infor Suite. So some of the big ones are column level filtering has advanced quite a bit since the release of Report Designer. We're going to talk about that a little bit more on the next slide. There's a lot of different options on how we can set up columns to report, so we can have year to date, life to date, beginning balance, prior year operators, all sorts of things around that. Calculated columns have been added as well, so you can do pretty sophisticated calculations within Report Designer without having to do too much back-end development there as well. And then there's composite reporting and page numbers, which we're going to talk a little bit more about on the next slide.
Great. Let's take a look at a couple of those.
Yeah, so just starting off, one of the newer features is the group headers for smart data organization. So you can see basically what this allows you to do is you can have multiple headers with the same name, kind of looking at the same sort of data, but they might be filtered on something like a different company or a different department within your organization. And you can kind of title those differently and group them differently within your report. It kind of allows you a little bit more flexibility on there. You're not just constrained to one header on each column. And then working down into enhanced column filtering. So there's a lot of flexibility, as I mentioned earlier, when it comes to the filtering we can do on columns. So we can do, filtering by the type of scenario. So this would be, budget, actual. You could have multiple budgets grouped into one column. There's a ton that you can do there. And then you can filter by your different dimension types, your account types, all of that's available. And it's as simple as just click of a button. Doesn't involve too much back-end development either. And then just to finish out, composite reporting is a newer feature, and we've seen a lot of improvements there in the last few releases. And essentially this is going to allow you to combine multiple reports into one. So you can have, kind of board packages all combined into one singular report. When you run it out, it's going to kick out all those reports together. So it's definitely a big one as well.
Nice. Now, Ian, you've been doing a ton of report development, primarily in the public sector for the last year and a half. Are these features here things that you're doing today? Like you're building reports with multiple column filtering. You've got the group headers there, composite reporting. Are those things that are adding to the value?
For sure, definitely. We've seen each of these come into play, and recently with reports we've been developing for clients. Group headers is a big one. Definitely see reports that clients may have in their old system that have different groupings and things like that. We can create those in Report Designer that makes them a good candidate. Column filtering. Almost every report we see that we develop has some level of column filtering, some more complicated than others. So that's probably the biggest one.
Nice.
And then, yeah, the composite reporting as well, for sure, with some of those board packages like I talked about, or if they want to have kind of differing rows between sections of the report.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's great to see the new enhancements, new features that we can use and clients can benefit from. So that's great. All right, we teased this earlier, but what we've come to discover is the ability to layer on Birst to your GL Report Designer report. So Ian, do you want to share with us what that means and what value that provides to our customers and clients that are using GL Report Designer?
Definitely, Chris. So yeah, this has been huge with some of the recent report development we've been doing out of Report Designer. So essentially, Report Designer reports, what they are is on the back end they are Birst reports. So within FSM, when we create them, it's creating them in Birst as well. It's just kind of a shortcut, and it allows us to have user-friendly interface when we're creating the report itself.
Mm-hmm.
So then through that, we found that you can actually access these reports from within the Birst space. And really where that's gone a long way is with the formatting of reports. So, when it comes to formatting, kind of, making reports look nice within Report Designer, we're somewhat limited in our options out of the box, but Birst really lets us go that or bring it to the next level when it comes to format. And we can do a lot there. So, it's pretty seamless moving those formats between environments. And the nice thing is if we have a drillable report out of Report Designer, we can, format it up to a board level standard, and we're still able to drill on it even after that. So
that's nice. You don't lose that.
Yeah. So
yeah, I mean, in your experience, when we do projects, right, we gather a list of reports, an inventory of reports for a client, and then designate a future state technology for that, whether that's Birst, whether that's App Studio, List Views, GL Report Designer. Does the addition of the Birst component to the overall format and layout, does that increase what we're seeing, or does that increase the number of reports that GL Report Designer can now take over, which ultimately makes it easier to maintain? We know Report Designer is a little bit easier on the end user than App Studio or something like that. So in your experience, does the addition of Birst move more of those reports over to GL Report Designer?
For sure, most definitely. So one of the biggest hurdles with Report Designer, as you said, when we're going through that early kind of report scoping in a project, prior to this, discovery, or prior to us implementing this process, was the formatting piece, right? Where a lot of the times, the reason we couldn't do this report out of Report Designer is, format just needs to be presentable to commissioners, the board, things like that. And then you're pushed more towards, App Studio, as you said, or just, straight out of the box Birst development, which, as we know, is a lot more time consuming and also very difficult to enable the client on when in comparison with, this process. So since we've, brought this along, I think that there's a lot more reports that we see out there early on in the project that we can now say, okay, this is something that we now know we can do out of Report Designer and Birst, and it's both going to save time and make it a more seamless experience for the client to be enabled on the maintenance process.
Yeah, 100%. Cool. All right, well, should we go take a peek at what we've been able to do with Birst?
Yeah, definitely. Let's take a look.
All right, so first, just setting the stage here, real world example. We've got a client need of, we got to present a report to the board commission, and it's got to look good. The GL Report Designer delivered formatting was deemed unsuitable for presentation. So that means, you got to explore App Studio or Birst. It's a heavy lift over there. So that, insert Birst into GL Report Designer, we're able to meet those requirements, to meet that requirement for the client. So do you want to just talk through what, this is an example of a report that you could create in GL Report Designer, but also add Birst formatting to. Do you want to just help us understand what we're looking at here and how this is different than just a standard GL Report Designer report?
Definitely. Yeah, so to your point, this report right here, a lot of the data piece, we could get it straight out of Report Designer, right? So that wasn't an issue. But then when we first, showcased this to the client, they were saying, this isn't something that we could send out to our commissioners. And the reason being, one of the things is the text out of the box, out of Report Designer, comes out as green. There's not really, you don't really have choices around what you can bold and kind of how you can separate columns. So you can see there's those column group headers at the top that we talked about earlier. So that's out of the box Report Designer. But then that bolding, the text coloring, the actual dividing of the columns with those lines, that's another example of something that we added through Birst. And then, so that those were the main things with this report that we added. And
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool. We'll jump down. We got another example here too, showcasing what the addition of Birst could do.
Yeah, so this one, there was a little bit more to it. The underlines, that's not something out of the box Report Designer, so that was an add. The way the totals are displayed, bolded, and organized in the way they are, it's another thing. Another big thing we've seen is when it comes to your row sorting, so this one's was sorted by department and account, you can do a lot of changes there that within Report Designer you're kind of constrained to one way that it's going to sort them and display them. But we were able to kind of change the sort around into a way that the client preferred and felt was more presentable.
Gotcha. Nice. Okay, so yeah, as I mentioned earlier, we are seeing an increased user adoption for GL Report Designer over the last year. I think a little bit there has to do with the Birst component, making the reports look good. A critical acceptance point for clients is the first visual of that report. You eat with your eyes first. So while the data might be right, the data's right on the report, layout's fine, but doesn't just have that fit, right? That you need to send it to someone, the board or someone. And this solves that problem, which is great. So maybe that's a little bit of a reason as why we're seeing an increased adoption of GL Report Designer. I also think it's easy, at least easier than App Studio, than Birst, and it empowers people in the accounting team, the finance teams, to go and build their own reports. Typically a little bit of training and then you're off to the races, but maybe that's another reason that we're seeing more and more organizations move to GL Report Designer. Not for everything, but there are specific reports that we are seeing that we wanted to share with everyone here that we often see as repeat types of reports that can go into Report Designer. Ian, do you want to help us here with what you're seeing?
Yeah, for sure. So just starting from the top, those board package reports we talked about earlier. So that goes kind of definitely to your point, Chris. It's that combination between Report Designer and Birst. Now we can have those composite reports that are going to allow us to deliver multiple reports in one export, and then we can also format those out. It's a great example. A lot of year-end reports. I've been seeing a lot of year-end reports that people have been wanting to use through Report Designer. These ones, they need to look presentable. They can be used for audit, things along those lines. Definitely seeing reports like that also being factored in. And then you have your, generic budget to actual reports, trial balance, all of that. can be received out of the box with the report designer. But then if you need that additional formatting component, that's another piece where you can add that in as well.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, yeah, and another component to that too, Ian, is that Infor has been putting time and effort over the last 2 years into continuous development, pushing out releases both large and small to the product over the last 2 years. We expect that to continue, and we'll be sure as a company to be on top of that and provide you with the latest and greatest intel, show you ways that we're using the product to hopefully help. That's our job. That's what we're here to do, and we love doing that. So hopefully this webinar was a nice way of showcasing the latest that we've experienced with the GL Report Designer product. That's it for us. Ian, any closing words on your side before we wrap up?
I think last thing, just to completely agree with you, Chris. This seems to be Infor's path towards the future when it comes to GL reporting. They're putting a lot into this. There's a lot of big changes to come, we think, and definitely want to get with the times and keep moving with that.
Cool. Well, if anybody has any questions, please email them to questions@rpic.com. We appreciate your time. We're always here for you. Reach out if you need us.